Hey, what's up, people? Welcome to my review and in-depth analysis for 1992's Alien 3, directed by David Fincher. This film is a massive disappointment for me and the perfect example of a film that was completely unnecessary. There was absolutely no reason for this film to be created. This film has a troubled production history. As you can, if you were to watch the making of documentaries in the DVD or Blu-ray release, you will see that this film went through many revisions in the writing process. Now, I just want to say that despite me hating this movie, the bonus features for this film on the Alien Quadrilogy box set for the DVD or Blu-ray was outstanding. The behind the scenes for this movie, or for the whole set, are exactly what I look for when I want bonus features. And in particular, Alien 3 was just amazing. In fact, it was a million times better than the movie. The story behind this movie is better than the actual movie. And this is the best example of that. And I absolutely love the behind the scenes documentaries for Alien 3 because I could see now why it was a complete and total disaster. So much so that David Fincher has basically distanced himself from this film. He has said literally, and I quote, "No one hates this movie as much as me." And I could see why, because David Fincher gave it his all. The only good thing about this film, or I should say, there's two good things about this movie. One is David Fincher's direction. The other is the acting. Okay, and also the cinematography is not too shabby, and same with the score, granted. However, what really makes this movie just an abomination to me is the story. It's the story and the script. And if you were to see this documentary showing the behind the scenes footage, you will see that they were literally writing the screenplay as they were filming the movie. And for me, that is a bad, bad sign. And I think the great film critic Ebert, Roger Ebert, summed it up best when he said that Alien 3, and I quote, is probably the best looking bad movie I've seen in a long time. And that's literally how I feel about the movie as well. This film is brilliantly directed as far as shot compositions and getting decent performances out of the actors. But when you sit back and think about this story, it is preposterous, boring, pretentious, a drag. Now, why was this film unnecessary? Well, for me, this movie was unnecessary, first of all, because really think about what happens in this film. Ripley has to destroy the alien queen again. Only this time the alien is inside of her. We've already seen Ripley destroy the alien queen in a far more epic, infinitely better film. The previous entry, which was Aliens. So for them to come and do the same thing again, and there's just no way. I just cannot fathom how anybody thought this could top Aliens. Now, for me, the next step that they should have taken this story, it's a no-brainer. They should have gone to the alien home world. I mean, that would have made perfect sense. Where do we need to go next with this story? I mean, Ripley had the perfect ending in Aliens. Considering everything she went through with the first film, the second film, losing her daughter, and then kind of getting this adopted daughter in the form of Newt, having a sense of camaraderie with Hicks, kind of inferring that they may be a family, and then all of a sudden that's taken away from her, just so we can have Ripley destroy the alien queen again. I mean, it was boring, and a huge disservice to the achievements of the previous film. Now, I really can't stand the fact that they killed off Newt. Killing Newt and killing Hicks was a travesty to me. And I don't know why they thought that was a good idea. I mean, all that work, all that effort to rescue Newt and to make it out alive, it's all for nothing, just to kill these two characters off screen. And right there from the very beginning, you know that this movie is a fail. It's a fail. I mean, that is heartbreaking. To watch Aliens just ended on such an epic note. The battle against the Queen, it was so epic. And then that victory that Ripley had, and seeing her with Newt, and then all of a sudden she just dies off screen in a crash. That really is infuriating. Another thing that I dislike about this movie is it's such a drag. It's so dull and nihilistic and depressing. And I feel like the film thinks it's being esoteric, but it's really just pretentious nonsense that's not profound whatsoever. It's a drag. It's depressing. And like I said, this movie is redundant. All we're doing is killing the alien queen again. I really hate this movie. And you really want to know what made me go against this movie? Because I kind of went back and forth whether I like this movie, because I appreciate the direction. And then they came out with the assembly cut, or the special edition cut, whatever you want to call it, which had like an extra 30 plus minutes integrated back into the movie, because the theatrical cut out a bunch of stuff. And then I was like, oh yeah, this is a much better film. But you know what? When you think about it, there's one thing about this movie that I cannot reconcile, or two things that I cannot reconcile with. The first being that Newt is dead. Hicks is dead. They took Ripley's happy ending away from her just to tell some nihilistic nonsense. But this, what I'm about to say right now, is probably the most important reason. And I don't hear enough people talking about this. Like, no one has ever said what I'm about to say when I've engaged with critics against this film. And it's this. The producers, the filmmakers, thought it was a good idea to team Ripley up with a bunch of child abusers, rapists, and pedophiles. And that is not an exaggeration. Dylan literally says, I'm a rapist and murderer of women. The warden literally says that the inmates are child molesters. How in the hell do you want me to empathize with these people, with these protagonists? And when I think about that, I'm like, this movie is preposterous. This movie is complete and utter trash. Who in their right mind thought it was a good idea to team Ripley up with a bunch of pedophiles and child molesters and think that the audience, or that myself, would be like, yeah, I hope they make it out alive? Like, it's disgusting. Really think about it. Really think about it. And again, this is not an exaggeration. This is stated in the movie. And to me, that is abominable that they did that. And yes, I understand what they were trying to do. They were trying to have Ripley be with these. This movie tries to go for this theme of redemption. However, for me, it fails spectacularly because Ripley, as far as writing off Alien and Aliens, she doesn't need redemption. She's not a bad person. So I don't get that. But it's like redemption for who? The prisoners on this planet? I don't want them to be redeemed because their crimes are unredeemable, in my opinion. Now, if they hadn't said child molesters and things like that, then it would have been like, okay, I could maybe empathize with the notion of these prisoners going through some sort of redemption by sacrificing themselves and helping Ripley out in order to kill this monster, the alien. But when you say that they're child molesters and you want me to like care about them and that they're rapists, and I'm sorry, it's not deep. It's disgusting. It's abhorrent. It's abominable and despicable. Like for the assembly cut or the special edition, they show that one of the inmates that attempted to rape Ripley actually like gets burned up in the attempt to kill the alien, and the way that they kind of composite the shot and direct the scene is attempting to make me kind of feel sorry, or even Ripley kind of be like, so the guy that tried to rape me is trying to help out, and now he got his face badly scarred. Oh man, what a good guy. No, I'm sorry. That does not work for me at all. I mean, and that's what I mean. It's like, not only is this film nihilistic trash, but it's amoral. It's like, oh, well, there's no right and wrong, whatever, kind of sentiments. And I find that to be despicable. I absolutely hate it. So, yeah, that is probably the major reason why I absolutely hate this movie. I mean, that reason is a bigger reason than Newt being killed. I mean, it's disgusting. Now, the production history behind this movie is crazy, right? So there's a lot of people who dislike this movie. They kind of subscribe to these sentiments that, if only they had gone with Vincent Ward's original vision of the wooden planet and the monks. And I'm sorry, but give me a break. That story was stupid too. Like I even think there's a book called like The Greatest Science Fiction Tales Never Told or something like that, and Vincent Ward's version of Alien³ was in there, and I'm sorry, but I disagree. Vincent Ward's story was dumb. It was stupid. So much so that a lot of it, he still got credited for the theatrical version of Alien³ because many of the ideas translated over to the finished version, and those ideas are stupid. And the concept of the concept of a wooden planet is just dumb. Really. And not only that, but there's scenes where one of the monk characters lifts his head into the upper atmosphere and he's like in space. I'm like, man, like, no way. Like, for all the complaining for like Covenant and even Alien Prometheus, for like kind of like the lack of science credibility for being realistic. Can you imagine if they had done Alien³ and had people on a wooden planet and characters lifting their head above the atmosphere so that they're in space? I mean, it's like, it's silly, like a cartoon. It's dumb. And like I said, a lot of the ideas translated into the theatrical final version. The only thing that they really changed was the setting of the planet not being a wooden planet, and making and kind of fusing the idea of monks with inmates. So these are like prisoners who are, I get, convicts. They're like convicts who are in this fundamentalist religious sect or cult or whatever. I mean, it's dumb. It's dumb. And Vincent Ward's ideas are still there. And they're a part of the problem, a major part of the problem. Now, if you've read William Gibson's treatment of Alien 3, that is way better than this. Even though there's some issues there, but I'd much would have rather had that been made into Alien 3 as a film than Vincent Ward's version. So if you haven't read William Gibson's treatment for Alien 3, I highly recommend it. They made it into a Dark Horse Comics, made it into a comic book, and it was even released as an audiobook with the actors who played Hicks and Bishop coming back to read the audiobook. I mean, that to me is more of an Alien 3 than this. I mean, it already feels better simply because Hicks and Newt don't die. And another thing, another better continuity or continuing of the story from Aliens than this piece of garbage is the Aliens comic books from the late 80s, early 90s, which were released by Dark Horse Comics. Those comics tell the continuing story of Newt and Hicks. And I've read the first volume. I have the second one, going to read it very soon. But that first volume was a million times better than Alien 3. And just as a comic book, it is outstanding. It has no business being that good. I mean, it's one of the best comics I've ever read. It was great. And I plan to do a video on that series very soon. I absolutely loved it. But like I said, this film has good acting, great actors. Like, the actors are outstanding. You have some of these actors feel like they come straight from the stage, but they are unlikable characters, right? Why? Because they're child molesters, they're rapists. I'm sorry, I'm not going to empathize with these characters. Like, there's no way. And I think they were trying to go for this whole, like, Ripley lands on this planet and she has to defeat the monster, the alien, while at the same time she's basically living among monsters who are humans, the worst dregs of society kind of thing. And again, it's just more nihilistic nonsense. It's like, I could just see, like, the thinking of the writers, thinking that they were making something deep and prolific, but it just came across as like postmodern nihilistic trash. And it took a long time for this series to recover, and it never got as good as Aliens or the first film, but I mean, the next film in this series suffered because it had to basically clean up the mess. I'm not a fan of Alien Resurrection, but it was better than this. Another thing that I feel like they were trying to go for in this film was like this kind of, there's kind of like this religious Christianity as far as the Book of Revelations kind of tone or sentiments going on throughout this film, with Ripley being kind of like the harlot because the inmates, the religious fundamentalist convicts, look at her as taboo and like the harlot, and that the alien is like the beast. So you have the harlot who brings the beast, and it's the revelation, it's the end times, and she also represents temptation, and it's and it's this religious order of rapists and child molesters and murderers, and it's just, oh God, such terrible ideas. awful, completely awful. I mean, it took a long time for me to realize just how bad this movie is and just how awful. Like, just, I think this film is the epitome of terrible ideas being infused in a film. Like, I don't know who in their right mind thought this movie would be good or well received. This movie is just awful. Another thing about these protagonists, these religious convicts, is not only is it impossible for me to empathize with them, but it's like they are all so similar that it's hard to distinguish among them. And for the life of me, I cannot recall the names of any of these people except for Dylan. That's it. All the other ones, I cannot recall what their names are. And the only reason why I remember Dylan is because he's a familiar face, right? I've seen him before in other films. But like Charles Dance's character, who is famous as the father in the father of Peter Dinklage's character in Game of Thrones. I don't know his name. I don't know the name of anybody in this movie because these characters are so similar and they're so bland and they're so boring. They all look alike. They all got shaved heads. I don't know who the hell who is, and I don't care. And if you really think about it, there's a lot of sitting around and yelling and cussing in this movie. I mean, it just drags on, and this movie is boring. It's boring because it feels like there's a lot of sitting around, talking, yelling, and cussing, and there's not enough suspense. Don't get me wrong. The movie thinks it's suspenseful. It thinks it is. The movie thinks it's a horror, but it's not. I'm not scared. I'm not in a state of suspense. I'm bored. I really am. And I really feel like what's to blame for that is the writing. And another thing that was just preposterous and ridiculous was that this planet or this facility is supposed to be this maximum security prison, but there's no weapons. That is just dumb. That is just dumb. I cannot fathom that. And I think that the reason why they didn't want weapons, I think the originator of that idea came from Sigourney Weaver. And God bless Sigourney Weaver. I think she's an amazing actress. I love Ripley. But I think that was a bad idea, and I don't think actresses or actors should be dictating the story. I really don't. I don't think that they should be dictating the story whatsoever. You're an actress. You're there to basically bring to life the characters that are written on the page. Now, if you were genuinely a writer, then okay, then that falls upon you. But I really don't like the idea that there's no weapons. And as I've stated, I don't like the idea that we have these convicts that are child molesters and rapists. I think it's awful. It really should have just been a monastery like Vincent Ward originally intended. I don't know why they wanted to make these prisoners. Probably because they thought it would be exciting to have Ripley live among quote-unquote human monsters, but it just should have been a monastery. It's like they tried to make them both. They tried to make these terrible dregs of human society, but also religious monks. And it just doesn't work for me. It's weird. It is so bizarre. There's a couple of things in here that I like. I mean, one thing that I like is I always like Ripley. I love that she's such a courageous character. For instance, when she's first introduced to the convicts and she's 100% fully aware that there's no woman present in this facility or on this planet whatever. She just doesn't give a, she does not give a crap. She goes and she sits right next to them and she's like, I must make you nervous. And she's a total badass. Why? Because she has been through worse. Going head to head with the alien queen and the aliens, sitting among these scumbags is nothing to her. Nothing. And in regards to comparing the assembly cut or whatever, the special edition with the theatrical cut, yeah, sure, the assembly cut is better than the theatrical version. One thing that I particularly like way better was the birth scene of the alien. So in the theatrical cut, the alien is born from a dog. But here it's born from an ox, and I think the special effects were outstanding for this scene. Now, I'm going to talk about the puppeteering, which just looks awful. I mean, it just looks terrible. But I'm talking about like the practical effects. Like when you see the alien and it's practical effects being implemented, it looks great. It really does. And the scene where the alien bursts out the ox and sticks out its tongue, and I love that. It looked great. And one thing about the special edition assembly cut is that there is a lot of good stuff that they cut out this film, and I have no idea why. I mean, not that it makes it a better movie, but I mean, not that it does make it slightly better. I'm sorry, I take that back. Not that it makes it a good movie. It doesn't even make it a decent movie. It doesn't even make it a passable movie. There's nothing you could do. This movie is screwed because the story at the heart of it is just abominable. But I will say, like, some of these scenes that were cut, I mean, they have good special effects. Should have just kept them in there. I mean, I don't know. But like I said, not that it would have made it a better movie. And there's some things that I like I like the sentiment or the feeling when you have like this alien birthing scene and it's being edited in juxtaposition with Dylan giving the funeral monologue for Newt and Hicks, and then the music's playing. I mean, it feels very artistic and beautiful, right? I mean, there's some good scenes here, but like I said, when you sit back and think about this story and when it ends, you're like, this thing was complete crap. It did not need to be made. I don't see how this makes the story better, the Ripley story better. She already destroyed the alien queen. It's just nihilistic trash. It's just depressing and despicable with this Ripley hanging out with these child molesters crap. I hate it. Another thing that was really, really just dumb was this whole emphasis or all this time that we spent on the Charles Dance character. Like, this character development and all this time focused to Ripley and the Charles Dance character, who's this doctor that feels like he maybe shouldn't be on this planet. He accidentally killed somebody through malpractice, and I think it was maybe his wife he lost or something. And then we spent all this time on this character, lots of talking, lots of expositional dialogue, and then he dies. And it's just kind of like, okay, you could have not had this character in here to begin with, and it would have made absolutely no difference. You literally could have took this character out of the movie, and it would have made no difference whatsoever. The only significant thing this character did, in my opinion, was perform the autopsy on Newt. I can't think of anything else of significance that this guy did. I don't understand the whole point of this character's existence. In fact, creative decisions such as this, I feel are only present in this film because they are trying to disguise a paper-thin plot. I mean, really think about it. Really think about the plot to this film, the meat of the story. And there's very little there. So they just put these scenes with all this talking and yelling and cussing to make you feel like there's drama. But in actuality, the plot is paper thin. Think about it. All there is that Ripley crashes on this planet. Hicks and Newt died. She thinks that the alien is responsible. The alien is responsible. Alien is born. Alien's killing off the prisoners. Ripley finds out an alien is inside her. She has to kill not only the alien that killed Newt and Hicks, but also do something about the alien inside her before Wayland Industries finds out about it and takes it from her. That's it. That's literally the plot of the story. So all this cussing and all this yelling and all this talking with characters such as the Doctor and all this moping around, it's just there to, I feel, as filler to pad this film out, to give it its 2-hour running time, because the plot again is paper thin. I mean, you could say the same about the original Alien, but there was some intrigue there, some suspense. That's another thing that this film really fails at, in generating suspense. One, because I don't care about the characters. Two, it's just all this dialogue, this expositional dialogue that leads to nowhere, because you can spend all the time you want on characterization, but it doesn't really matter to me if I despise the characters, if they're child molesters and pedophiles. Like, I don't want to get to know these people. I mean, and there's nothing profound about this at all. Such a bizarre and abhorrent film, Alien 3 really is. Now, again, I think the notion, the fact that Ripley saved the individual, the guy that tried to rape her, and then he basically sacrificed, and then the other prisoner basically sacrifices himself. The rapist does sacrifice himself. The prisoner does in fact sacrifice himself in order to trap the alien in that, I guess you want to say, room full of toxic waste or whatever. This was in the special edition cut. Again, I have to ask myself, are they trying to go for some redemption theme? Not only just in this sequence, but throughout. And I just feel like it's just so bizarre. It's like they're trying to go for this whole, like, Ripley is like Jesus, and just like Jesus, he died on the cross next to criminals. So juxtapositioning Ripley with these criminals is kind of like a similar, like they're trying to almost draw an analogy to that. And I just feel like it fails miserably. It just fails to me. Another thing that I feel is questionable or preposterous was just the fact that, how did Ripley know that the alien inside of her was a queen? And she was able to basically deduce this just from looking at the ultrasound on the screen. She's like, it's a queen. And also to be able to draw this conclusion because the alien didn't kill her. Oh, it's because I have a queen inside me. It doesn't feel very scientific in my opinion. And I just don't know where Ripley would derive that expertise from when she's not an expert in, the aliens are this big mystery at this point in the series. So for her to make that conclusion, The only reason why is because the script demanded it, in other words. I just felt like it was really bad writing. And coming to the puppeteering, I feel like the puppet work, like when the alien is chasing the protagonist, it's awful. It is awful. It is without a doubt, hands down, the worst special effects in this entire series. Now, I'm not a big fan of the CGI that was used in Alien Covenant, but this is just embarrassingly bad. And I'm talking specifically when the alien is chasing, when it's running. It's just bad compositing, bad lighting of the puppet. Like, the lighting of the puppet doesn't match the lighting of the live action elements. It just looks awful, really bad. Now, like I said, in regards to the alien, like when they're using practical effects, it looks beautiful. It does. It looks beautiful. It looks very realistic. And I do enjoy the fact that they show the alien sparingly. Again, they tried really hard to emulate the vibe of the first film to create horror. But I feel like it just fails spectacularly. The film is not scary to me whatsoever. Even though they're going for that similar tone and they retain that tone throughout the duration of the film, I just did not feel any suspense or fear at all whatsoever. Now, ultimately, they end up killing this alien by cooling the hot lead. So basically, they lure the alien into hot lead, and then they cool the hot lead by drenching water on it, and the alien explodes through the hardening of the hot lead. All right, I guess that was creative, and you can kind of see, we want to get rid of weapons to make it more challenging. There were some interesting ideas there, but just the execution is just no good, and it just makes no sense that on a prison they would not have weapons. It makes no sense also that there's no guards, things like that, no prison guards. I mean, I get that these prisoners are trying to be monks, or they're trying to subscribe to the sentiments of their religion and not commit violence and things like that. But come on. Like, I just feel like there's bound to be a schism in there. There's bound to be some sort of revolt, some sort of riot. I don't know, man. I feel like this story could have been written infinitely better. One thing, too, now they go for this redemption thing because basically all the prisoners die except for one. And then 85, who was kind of like the assistant to the warden, he sacrifices himself. In fact, 85, that character was probably the only one, aside from Ripley, that I actually had some kind of feeling towards, because 85 did come across as a normal person that got put in this predicament against his will. I mean, he was just doing his job. And then he talks about how he has a family. So I could see how him getting stuck in the middle of this terrible situation. I mean, he just wants to go home. He doesn't care about any of this. And he states that. He states that he has a family. He just wants to go home. He's not interested in sacrificing himself to save the world or save the galaxy from the xenomorphs. He just wants to go home to his family. That's it. And then at the very end, when they're about to when Wayland Industries, in the form of Bishop, another Bishop, right? It's not Bishop, it's a similar android, tries to take the alien inside Ripley, and in an attempt to stop her, or rather in an attempt to stop Wayland Industries from stopping Ripley from sacrificing herself, 85 sacrifices himself and is killed. I felt something right there. It was the only time in this movie that I actually felt like, oh man, that dude That dude, everybody thought that guy was an idiot. That's why they called him 85, because that was his IQ. Everybody thought this dude was a selfish piece of crap. And in the end, he proved them all wrong, or he proved the audience wrong. And I felt bad for the guy, but he sacrificed himself and sacrificed being with his family so that he could save the galaxy from the xenomorphs, so that he could protect Ripley. So not protect Ripley, but so that he could stop Wayland Industries from stopping Ripley from sacrificing herself to destroy the alien inside her, the queen. And this right here, the ending, the actual ending, like literally the actual 5 minutes, last 5 minutes of this film is good. It's a good ending, but it's still, this whole story was unnecessary. Ripley already defeated the alien queen in an epic manner that cannot be topped in the previous film. So to do this whole nihilistic, unnecessary introspection, redemption, downer, depressing movie was just unrealistic, man. I despise this movie. I really hate this movie. And like I said in the introduction, they should have made the third film take place on the alien homeworld, or bring the aliens to Earth. Either or. I don't know who in their right mind thought this would have been a good and successful story, because it wasn't. Obviously it wasn't, because they did some outrageous resurrection thing with Ripley in the next film, but can you really blame them? This film was a fart, man. It was a complete downer and despicable. I really hate this movie. Now, a part of me wants to give a part of me wants to give this film a D, simply because of the direction, because David Fincher, etc., etc. But, as far as story goes, this movie sucks. And trying to put Ripley, team her up with a bunch of pedophiles and child molesters is despicable, man. This movie's an F. I really don't like this movie at all. It's a complete fail. Don't waste your time. Please don't. Thank you guys for listening to this review and in-depth analysis of Alien 3. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and share. Take care, people. And last but not least, one love.